And welcome back to the Financially Simple Experience. So friends, we're in a very interesting season in the life of the business owner. Never in my life, now remember, I've been a business owner for almost 30 years. And in my 30 years, as I say, never in my life, have I seen such an attack on margin, on profit. The very thing that we seek to earn, it's under attack right now. Why, you may ask? Well, inflation. Inflation is kicking us in the teeth as business owners. You know, I have the honor and privilege to talk with hundreds of business owners just about monthly, either through the podcast or through social media, and feel free to connect with me on social media, or even when I'm engaging in speaking events, etc. Just this last week, I was engaged with a speaking event in Atlanta, Georgia, and there were 20 some odd business owners. These are seasoned top 1% in their industry of business owners. And as I'm talking to them, as we're engaging back and forth, they're acknowledging the fact that margin is under attack. Inflation is hurting us. So when we look at our financial statement as business owners, we automatically go to the expense section. Where can I cut expenses? Can I reduce my labor costs? Can I reduce my marketing costs? Can I reduce my HR costs? Whatever cost you look at through your lens, you're trying to reduce expenses. And it's a sound strategy. And many times we can cut a little bit off the business in terms of expenses. And just maybe you go to your vendors and you say, hey, can I reduce the widgets that you're providing to my business? Can I lower my cost of goods, which will then in turn drive more margin to our business? But I got to tell you, friends, when we look at that top number, the revenue number, how we get paid, the very thought of us going to our customers and raising their prices, man, that leaves us awake at night. It may leave a pit in our stomach to where we really can't even think through it logically. You know, pricing is such a delicate subject. If you set your price too low, your margins are going to suffer. Your business is not going to flourish. It's going to get bogged down through the throughput of your company. On the other hand, if you increase your prices too high, you could very well alienate the very customers you seek to gain. So that's why I want to use today's episode. I want to look at the possibility of, can you raise your prices without losing customers? Well, before we answer that question, we have to look at our current reality, the lens to which we're operating, the rules of the game in front of us as business owners. It's shocking to me when I read this stat from the U.S. Labor Department that the inflation rate for the last 12 months ending in August 2022 was 8.3%. 8.3, friends. I've been in the financial planning world for almost 20 years. I've conducted and generated many. If I said hundreds of plans, that would probably not be a far stretch for me. And at no point in my career have I ever entered 8.3 as an inflationary rate. No, typically you may use 2.5, you may go up to 3.5, you may use 4.5 as a long-term inflation rate. But right now we're experiencing, according to the U.S. Labor Department, an 8.3% inflation rate. Well, what's the big deal? Well, according to J.P. Morgan, it reveals that 56% of U.S. consumers are willing to spend less overall. Because prices are increasing, people don't want to spend as much. This puts a small business owner in a very interesting situation. As long as this margin, this delta between where prices are moving and where consumers are spending, we're left now trying to figure out, what are we going to do? What are we going to do to drive our profit? What are we going to do to be able to pay the bills? There's a report from Cabbage which states that the average business owner increased prices about 21% across all industries. Now, this is a direct response to the increase in cost from their vendors, from their cost of goods. Roughly about 54% from vendors and about 45% from raw materials. So because our vendors, the people providing us the materials that we need for our business or the supplies we need for our business, because they are increasing their prices, many times we're left trying to increase our prices so we can pass those on to our customers. But that leads to the question, how do we raise our prices without losing our customers? How do we raise our prices without losing our customers? I'll walk you through a step-by-step approach here that you might want to consider in your business. The first thing is you have to determine how much your price needs to be to meet the demand. You have to determine what your price needs to be. This is going to require a multifaceted approach. It's going to require you to look at data perhaps like you've never looked at before. It's going to require an analytical thinking point. I just concluded this with one of the departments in our company, diving deep into data that the department head had never even considered before, trying to figure out what does our price need to be to meet the current demands of the market. But what does this require? But how do we do this? The first thing you're going to do is you're going to assemble your team. Perhaps this is an internal team. If you have multiple team members on your team, like I currently do, it requires me bringing the right players to the table who have the information that I need to make the decision as the business owner. Or perhaps you're a sole proprietor and you're going to work with the outside vendors. You're going to need to talk to your finance department, your marketing department, your operations department. In this particular solution that I was trying to solve for, I had to talk to HR, to finance, to operations, and to legal in order to discover what exactly I needed the price point to be and how I could get it there. So we have to assemble our internal team. Then we have to look at where our current business is. So where are we going and where are we at? You've heard me say this before. We always need to know where we're going, specifically how we're going to get there. And if we know where we're at, then we can devise that strategy on how we're going to get there. I often use the example that one day I'm going to go to Portland, Oregon, and I could drive to Portland, I could fly to Portland, I could take a train to Portland, I could take a taxi to Portland. From my house in East Tennessee, I could even take a boat to Portland, Oregon. How am I going to get there? What makes the most sense for me and my family if I'm going to take that journey? The same is true in business. We need to know where we're going. So we ask questions like, are our current customers pleased with the offering that they currently have? If so, why? If not, why? We want to look at the historical data regarding prices within our industry. How often does the industry that we work in raise their prices? There are certain industries that do it pretty regularly. They go in and they raise their prices annually. I remember when I had my landscape company, as the price of gasoline would increase, we would so increase the prices to the customers. And it was usually received fairly well because all customers realized the cost of gasoline. So you want to look at your current business and how you could position it for the future. You want to assess the industry as a whole. How are our customers going to feel if we increase the price of our service by X? Does price sensitivity really matter? Depends on the type of industry you're in. I've seen some industries where they can go in and raise their prices, no big deal. Case in point, think about gasoline, as I was just mentioning. Yes, we may cut a little bit of our travel down when it moves 30, 40, 50, 60 cents. No big deal. In some businesses, though, if you move the price of the service by 30, 40, 50, 60 cents, literally pennies, that is a huge deal. If you move the price by 1%, that is huge. In the financial world, many firms charge like a 1 or 1.5% just to manage assets. Imagine if all of a sudden they double that from 1.5 to 2.5. That's a big deal. Some customers might not like that. The regulators might not like that. When we look at the industry as a whole, we have to ultimately come to, okay, we see the meta narrative, we see the macro, but let's pull it down to the micro. What are our competitors doing in our local markets? Are they raising their prices? I noticed the other day in a small town that I live in that a beauty salon had raised their prices by $2 on a haircut. As I drove down the road, I saw another beauty salon, if you will, a hairdresser, somebody who cut men's hair, had raised their prices by $3. No doubt the local establishment and the chain establishment had seen each other's prices and were making competitive moves in order to stay within the price point. What are your competitors doing? Then you want to come down to your particular situation. So we've looked external. What's the industry doing? We've looked micro. What is our local competitors doing? Now we want to come deep into what we need. Do you truly need to make the 20% margin, whatever your margin is, the 40% margin? Are you able to run a slightly lower margin right now and get through this very tough time, this very tough season? If you are, maybe you stand tight and you don't raise your prices. On the other hand, you may just have to raise your prices in order to move forward. There's a concept called peanut butter allocation. You know, like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Basically, whenever you get peanut butter out of the jar and you try to put it on a piece of old-fashioned white bread, you know, the type that sticks to the roof of your mouth, when you try to do that, you're ultimately trying to get the peanut butter to cover the entire slice of bread. That makes the best PB&J. Now, personally, I like peach jelly and crunchy peanut butter on my peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. But nonetheless, there's this concept called peanut butter allocation. And what it's referring to is much like you spread that piece of that peanut butter across a whole piece of bread, you want to spread the cost increases across the entire company, across multi-divisions in your company. You want to simply smooth that price increase across the entire product line, not just one service. Many times I see business owners, they'll go out and they'll say, hey, we're going to raise our price on only this particular product, but nothing else. It often will lead us to a less than desirable outcome, which is why peanut butter allocation came about. If you're going to look at price increases, you want to look at it moving it across the entire company. Think about peanut butter going across a piece of bread. The next thing we want to do is we want to determine our new price. This is where you're looking with your accountant, your advisors, your business coach. What should your new price be? What meets the global demand? What meets your micro demand within your community? And what meets your business's demand? And once you identify that, now you've got to uncover a strategy to propel that price point or that price movement throughout your entire company. This is where I'll often use a pro forma. I want to project out if I raise my price by X and I lose Y potential of revenue from customers leaving, what does it do to Z, my bottom line? So I'll use a pro forma to project out what's going to happen into the future. This is where your external advisors can help you. Now, whenever you're looking at this particular movement, one of the things that you might consider is a price per unit versus maximum sales volume. The other day, I was working with a financial planning department. I was looking at how many plans our company did nationally. I did a price per unit assessment versus a sales volume. Yes, I could see the top line revenue that the whole department had generated, but I wanted to get down to the nitty gritty. How many plans did we actually do? And if we could actually increase our price per plan by 10%, it could have a multiplicative effect to our sales volume. So when you're looking at your price point, you want to dive down a little deeper and look at your price per unit many times versus looking at your maximum sales volume. Now, once you have this data point, it becomes very, very tricky because now you have to communicate your findings. Now you have to inform your team as to how we're going to raise prices. More importantly, why? Why are we raising prices? What's the short-term effect or negative reaction? What's the positive long-term effect? As we begin talking with our team, we're going to have to look into the details and address all of their concerns. We have to gain buy-in. After all, our team is the one who's going to be communicating with the client. Our sales team has to be able to communicate why the increase in pricing. We're going to have to control the ability to discount the pricing. We're going to have to reduce rebating. We have to look at standardizing the sales process even further as we begin increasing pricing. But here comes the tricky part, and it's the final building block to make this concept a reality. We have to communicate the change with our customers. After all, if we have no customers, we have no business. Fortunately, everybody right now is aware of the inflationary trend. Everybody is. We're talking about it. Just yesterday evening, as the football game was playing, I was listening to a commentator talk about inflation. And now he did an outstanding job talking about inflation. In fact, he painted it as the enemy as it truly is for us small business owners. So one of the good things we have at our disposal right now is most people are aware that inflation is kicking us in the teeth. And there is a movement across multiple segments of the market where price increases are happening. However, friend, transparency and value remain extremely high priorities for many customers. They want to make sure that as they're getting price increase, that the value is going to remain. So how do we communicate price increases with your customers without running them off? Okay, let's pull this onion back. Here we go. We're going to dive a little deeper. The first thing we have to do is consider our timing. When do you plan to increase your prices? Are you going to do it all at once? Are you going to do it incrementally? As you increase prices, You may have to inform your customers before you ever make the price movements. So like in the financial world, if we're going to increase prices, we have to tell our customers 30 days plus before we ever make the movement happen. In some businesses that our business advisory team consults on, they actually have longer than 30 days that they have to acknowledge a price increase. So we have to consider our timing. Regardless of how you increase your pricing, you must be mindful of when you do so. Do you really want to increase your pricing right before Christmas or Thanksgiving or New Year's or Hanukkah? That may be a very bad time. At the same token, do you really want to increase your prices at the same time when people are dealing with taxes in April? You see, when matters. So we have to consider our timing. The next thing is we have to remind our customers of the value of our product or service. We have to look at the premium that we provide to our customers. We have to acknowledge the perceived value. We may have to acknowledge some of the flaws we have, some of the hard times we've gone through, especially through COVID. Right now, there are some segments of the marketplace that just are having a tough time. I'm thinking of my friends in the accounting world right now. Holy cow. Accountants are having a very tough time right now. They've dealt with COVID. They've dealt with unbelievable law changes. And now they're dealing with business owners who are trying their best to understand all these various movements. Let me tell you, friends, accounting firms are having a tough time right now. So accountants are having to constantly remind their customers, hey, here's where we're at. Here's what we just came through. Give us a little grace. We're going to continue to drive forward. We're going to do the best we can to deliver the value that you expect. There's research from the PwC that reveals that 86% of customers are willing to pay more for a great customer experience. Let me say that again. 86% of customers are willing to pay more for a great customer experience. The other evening, my wife and I were headed to Atlanta for a speaking event. And on the way down, we stopped north of Atlanta and we did something we usually don't do. We went to for us, an expensive restaurant. We went to a restaurant called the Melting Pot, which was about a $200 meal, which is outside of our normal price point for Emily and I. We're typically very low key. I mean, stop by Subway and we're happy. But we wanted to pay more than normal so that she and I could have an experience of just sitting down, a little candlelight dinner, very quiet, something that she and I could just talk. We don't get to do that often with kids. And if you have kids, you know what it's like. We were willing to pay more so that we could have a good customer experience. And the server there was unbelievable. She was so sweet. She knew we were away from the kids. She was laughing with us and she just made the evening great. So we left her an exceptional tip because we wanted the customer experience. So more than likely, your customers are willing to pay more if the value they perceive is a great customer experience. So this begs the question, are we worth the money? Are we worth what our customers are paying? The last thing we do whenever we look at raising the prices, especially with customers, is we want to very carefully monitor the impact of our price increases. We want to outline the metrics to which we're going to ensure that the price increase are going to have the desired effect. Internally, we're going to measure how much your increase is reaching the bottom line. We don't want the increase in price to get eaten up through COGS or through SG&A. We don't want that to happen. We want to see it flow to the bottom line. So if we increase our prices by 2%, we want to see a 2% increase in our NOI. So we have to measure effectively and monitor the situation very carefully as we increase our prices. The other thing we need to do as we're monitoring is we want to get customer feedback. If we just raise our prices by 2%, then follow that up with a 30, 60, 90-day customer survey, acknowledging the fact you raise your fees. Maybe the reason you raise your fees was because of inflation or because of your vendor cost. You can acknowledge that. Hey, friends, we're in a very tough time right now. As you know, prices are increasing. We want to see if our service quality has remained constant to your expectation with the most recent price increase. You want to get your customers' feedback so you know the overall health of your company. I got to tell you, friends, this is a tough one. It's a tough one to go to your customers and ask them to pay more. It's hard. I can remember the very first time I did this, the very first time, I was 17 years old. 17 years old. You see, my brother, my mom, and I was 15, learning how to drive. My mom had taken off work from the hospital. She was a nurse there, and she was teaching my brother and I how to run a business. My brother was about 4 years younger than me, so 10, 11 years old. And here we are, two kids, pull up to a job site in a little pickup truck, unload lawnmowers and weed eaters, and get out there and do our best job to make the customers' yards and house look beautiful. And my mom was there to ensure quality control and teach us, hey, here's what it's like. I'll never forget the lesson she taught us. Son, never leave leaves or grass clippings where the customer comes home. Where they drive their car into the garage, you don't want it to look bad. You want, when they come home, it look good. In the backyard, yeah, you may miss a stick, but where they walk, don't miss anything. I never forget that. But some time went by, and here we are, 17, and now we have a full business. We're working nonstop. We have commercial equipment. We've been doing this, and we had mastered the art of caring for people's yards. And our prices of $20 for 3 hours worth of work just wasn't even paying the bills. The cost had increased rapidly because of gasoline. The cost of insurance had kicked in, and we couldn't maintain that low price point any longer. And I can remember going to some of my, what at that time, legacy clients, these individuals who had faith in a 15-year-old and 11-year-old and paid us lawn care by the boys, paid us a little bit of money just to keep their grass cut. And I can remember knocking on the door and saying, Mister, hey, look, I appreciate your loyalty to us, and we haven't raised prices, but we're going to need to. We can't maintain the current cost. We're losing money. And though we like you and though we love you, we just can't do it for the same price point we've had for the last 24 months, for the last 2 years. We need to raise our prices. I can remember one individual, she said, I understand. That makes sense to me. What's the new price going to be? And the price was double what she was used to paying. And she said, interesting. How did you come up with that price? And we took all of our data points and we laid it in front of her and said, here's how much it costs for us to run the gasoline to the cars to get here now. Here's how much the insurance cost us. Here's how much our time. And she looked at that and she goes, okay, I don't have that in my budget, but I'm going to do that for you because I can see how you arrived at that solution. Friends, I learned a valuable lesson that day, 17 years of age, unbelievable lesson. And that is this: people value authenticity. People value vulnerability. People value truth. People value good work. Whenever we approach our customers in the right spirit and the right frame of mind with the right research, and we can show that our price increase is not out of whack, that our price increase aligns with the macro, the micro, and even our local markets, our customers, though they may not be happy, though they may not be pleased, though they may even consider leaving, and some may, our customers many times will continue on the journey with us because they value us. So friends, as you look at this very hard situation that we find ourselves in, inflation's killing us. May I challenge you to use an open mind and look at the very possibility that you can raise your prices without losing your customers. It is extremely possible. Until next time, friends, y'all go out and make it a great day.